Trapped in a blizzard, paramedics slammed on the brakes when a German Shepherd blocked their ambulance. But when they stepped out into the freezing dark to move him, they found a half-frozen baby hidden in the snow. You will be surprised to hear what happened next. Snow hammered the windshield in thick, blinding sheets as the ambulance crawled along the winding mountain road. The wipers struggled to keep up, smearing icy streaks across the glass. Inside the cab, paramedic Daniel Hart kept one white-knuckled hand on the wheel while his partner, Julia, gripped the dashboard to steady herself. The radio crackled with dispatch updates about stranded vehicles and power outages. Visibility's dropping fast, Daniel muttered, leaning forward to peer into the swirling white. We need to get this oxygen tank to the clinic before someone else loses heat. Julia nodded grimly. Every minute they spent out here, the risk of getting stuck grew. But duty was duty, and there was no turning back. Suddenly, Daniel squinted and tapped the brakes. A dark shape stood motionless in the road ahead. As they drew closer, the headlights revealed the unmistakable silhouette of a German Shepherd, its fur powdered in snow. The dog didn't flinch. It just stared straight into the lights, chest heaving with visible puffs of breath. Is that a stretch? Julia asked, incredulous. Out here. Daniel honked the horn twice. The dog's ears twitched, but it refused to move. He tried edging forward, but the shepherd stepped closer, blocking them completely. Great, Daniel sighed, shifting into park. I don't have time for this. Julia pressed her hand to the glass, studying the animal. Wait, look at him. What about him? He's not just standing there. He's waiting. They exchanged a tense glance. Snow lashed the hood, the engine ticking in the cold. Whatever this dog was doing, it wasn't random, and something about the steady way he watched them made Julia's stomach twist with unease. Daniel cracked his window an inch, letting in a blast of freezing air. Hey, go on, he shouted, waving his arm. But the German Shepherd didn't budge. Instead, it barked, short, sharp, insistent. The sound wasn't angry. It was pleading. The dog began to pace in front of the ambulance, circling back to the driver's side, then trotting to the edge of the trees before running back again. Each time, it stopped to stare at them, as if urging them to follow. Julia felt her pulse quicken. It's trying to show us something. It's a dog, Julia. Daniel's voice was strained. We're in the middle of a blizzard, and we have a delivery to make. But the shepherd barked again, more desperate this time. It darted toward the tree line, looked back over its shoulder, then ran a few steps further into the swirling snow. Daniel, what? If there's someone out there? Julia whispered that he hesitated, his gloved hand resting on the gear shift. The dog's eyes glowed in the headlights, steady and unblinking. In all his years of emergencies, Daniel had never seen an animal behave like this. With a reluctant sigh, he turned off the engine. Fine. 5 minutes. We look, then we move on. Julia pushed open her door, her boots sinking ankle-deep into drifts. The German Shepherd gave one final bark and disappeared into the trees. Come on, she called over her shoulder, her heart hammering. We have to see what it wants us to find. The cold bit straight through Julia's jacket as she followed the shepherd's tracks into the trees. Daniel trailed behind, the beam of his flashlight jittering across drifts of untouched snow. The dog was just ahead, pausing every few yards to look back and make sure they were still coming. Where are you taking us? Daniel muttered, breath clouding in front of his face. Suddenly, the shepherd stopped at the base of a crooked pine. It circled a small mound in the snow, whining low in its throat. Julia lifted her flashlight, the beam catching something that made her heart seize at a corner of blue fabric peeked from the drift. Oh God, she whispered, dropping to her knees. Her gloved hands scraped away powdery snow, faster and faster, until the shape underneath came clear. It was a baby, swaddled in a thin blanket, face pale and still. Tiny lips tinged blue. Daniel let out a strangled noise and fell to his knees beside her. Call it in, he barked, fumbling for the radio. Julia pressed 2 fingers to the baby's neck, praying for any sign of life. A faint flutter of a pulse tremored against her skin. Relief and terror clashed in her chest. He's alive, she gasped. But he's freezing. The shepherd whined again, pressing close to the infant as though trying to shield him from the cold. Julia bundled the baby into her arms, feeling how frighteningly limp he was Daniel's voice crackled through the radio, urgency slicing through the static. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. We have an infant in severe hypothermia. I repeat, infant found in snow. Beginning transport now. The dog's eyes met Julia's, as if begging her to hurry. She didn't need the look to know. They were racing the clock. Julia sprinted up the embankment, cradling the baby tight against her chest. Each step felt impossibly slow, the snow dragging at her boots like hands trying to pull her under. The German Shepherd kept pace at her side, never falling behind. Daniel wrenched open the ambulance doors, his face pale. "Lay him here," he ordered, pulling the stretcher halfway out. Julia eased the baby onto the blankets as Daniel grabbed heated packs and an oxygen mask. The shepherd leapt in without hesitation, squeezing past them to press close to the infant. His warm body curled protectively around the tiny form, as if he alone could keep death at bay. "Get him out of here," Daniel snapped, reaching to pull the dog back. But Julia grabbed his arm. "Wait, look." The baby's eyelids fluttered. A thin cry slipped past blue lips. "He's responding to the warmth," Julia said, voice shaking. "Let him stay." Daniel swallowed hard, then nodded. They worked in frantic tandem, warming the baby's chest, rubbing tiny hands and feet, slipping the oxygen mask over his nose. Every few seconds, Julia checked for a pulse, terrified each time she might not find it. The shepherd didn't move, didn't even flinch when Julia leaned over to check the baby's heartbeat again. He just kept his body pressed close, radiating heat. Finally, a stronger wail broke through the hush of the ambulance. Julia nearly sobbed with relief. She looked at the dog, her voice raw. "You did it," she whispered. Sirens wailed as Daniel slammed the doors shut and pulled onto the road. Snow battered the windows, but inside the ambulance, a fragile life had found its way back. And the dog never looked away from the baby, as if promising he wouldn't leave again. The hospital lobby erupted in motion the moment they wheeled the baby through the doors. Nurses swept in with warming blankets and monitors, voices clipped. And urgent. The German shepherd trotted beside the stretcher, refusing to let the child out of his sight. That a nurse paused, blinking at the snow-dusted animal. "Is Key with you?" Julia managed a weary smile. "In a way, he's the reason this baby's alive." While the medical team worked, Daniel borrowed a scanner and passed it over the shepherd's neck. A sharp beep confirmed what he'd hoped. "There's a microchip," he said, relief softening his features. Minutes later, a record printed out. Julia read the details aloud, her throat tight. "His name is Atlas. He belonged to the Crawley family." She looked up, her eyes brimming. "They reported missing in the storm 3 days ago." One of the nurses approached, her expression stricken. "We just got word. Search teams found a vehicle off the road. The parents didn't survive." Julia pressed a hand over her mouth. In that terrible silence, she understood. Atlas had stayed with the baby, guarding him for days in the snow, until help finally came. News of Atlas spread faster than the storm itself. Reporters gathered outside the hospital, eager to share the story of the dog who refused to give up. Inside, Julia stood by the nursery window, watching the baby sleep peacefully in a warm incubator. Atlas lay curled beneath the glass, his head resting on his paws. His eyes never left the tiny form he'd saved. Even after everything, he was still guarding him. Daniel stepped up beside her. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" She nodded, her throat tight. "He belongs with family. And if there isn't any left, maybe he can be part of ours." Later that night, as the baby's first soft cries echoed down the hall, Atlas lifted his head. His ears twitched, as though he recognized the sound. Julia smiled through tears. "Good boy," she whispered. "You're home now."